With your host, Andrew Donaldson. This is Heard Tell.
Welcome back to Heard Tell. I'm Andrew Donaldson. Thank you so much for giving us the most precious thing you have, your time, and we don't ever want to waste it. That's why we do what we do, turn down the noise of the news cycle. And this got really noisy on social media. Let's go to The Atlantic. Emily Oster wrote this. It's titled, "Let's Declare a Pandemic Amnesty. We need to forgive one another for what we did and said when we were in the dark of COVID." Now, it's a long piece. We link to it. Go read it for yourself. Make up your own mind. But let's take the question up because, as you can imagine, this exploded all over social media and people had reactions. And I'm a writer. I do this for a living. So, yes, I understand most people that are reacting to it didn't read it. I get all that. But the question's a fair one. Should we just amnesty everything that happened during COVID? Now, the author goes to great pains to differentiate between a couple things. Talks about things that went right and wrong. Talks about the problems with the school system and test scores now. Talks about some of the health stuff that we didn't know, and didn't. She makes a very important distinction between people that were malicious and people that were just wrong but were trying. I think all those things are fine, but let me take the question on its merits for just a moment and kind of keep it to a level that we can do in this short time frame. Should we have blanket amnesty for people during the COVID pandemic? The short answer, it depends. What were they doing? See, here's your problem is amnesty means that nobody's going to be accountable. Now, accountability and retribution are two very different things. There's a lot of people that want retribution for what happened. That's a different argument. I don't think we should be seeking retribution because you can't undo what is done, but I think you should have accountability to understand why it happened and try to prevent it from happening again. Let's be real crystal clear. Most of the problems that occurred during COVID, whether it was problems with the school, problems with the government, problems with the healthcare system, or problems with us and how we dealt with crisis, didn't start the moment COVID happened. They were things that were already in place, things that were already set in motion, habits and designs, and the way we already did things that left us vulnerable. In other words, a lack of accountability before the pandemic has a lot to do with the things that went wrong during the pandemic. And if you're not going to have any accountability after the pandemic, guess what's going to happen during the next crisis or the next pandemic or the next economic crisis or whatever comes next? See, crisis is always going to come again. And the best thing you can do for the next crisis is learn from the last crisis, prepare yourself, and then you're a little bit more ready for it than you were. So here's the problem with blanket amnesty. No, you can't do that because not everything was equal. Like the author breaks down, and you should read the whole piece. Don't just knee-jerk to the title. The people that were malicious need to be accountable. The people that were incompetent need to be accountable. Maybe more important than all those, the people who used this crisis to further what they were already doing and believing and wanting and striving for, and never made any adjustments whatsoever other than slamming the crisis into the hole they needed it to be so they could further their agenda, they definitely need an accountability. They need to be held to account for what they did, because when they saw a crisis, all they thought about was themselves and their cause and how they could manipulate everybody else. And there was a lot of people on all sides doing that. And not all of them were just for bad sides. Some of them came hawking good reasons and saying, well, we need to do this for the general health, and we need to do this for the children, and we need to do this for this, that, and the other. But if it was not adjusted to the crisis at hand, and it was just for them to get what they've always wanted anyway, they need to be held accountable for that. The folks that made honest mistakes, yes, of course, they should get some amnesty. They should get some forgiveness. The people that made mistakes and admit it, they definitely need it. And they need it publicly to say, yes, you made an error, but you admitted it. Those folks we need to give some grace to. The folks that just didn't know any better, they should get some grace. But the people that knew better, the people that were malicious, the people that used this to try to increase their power and influence and manipulation over other people, and there were a lot of them. They're in our schools, they're in our governments, they're in our businesses, and they're in our families. Oh, yes, our families I don't have Facebook for a reason, and the pandemic sure did emphasize why I don't, because I saw what people did to people they say they love. They say our family, they say our friends. Look at how folks treated each other on social media. Some of y'all need to ask not for amnesty, but for forgiveness. And you need to be accountable to those people that you hurt. Maybe start there before you start demanding amnesty and forgiveness of the government or of medical officials or of the school system. But they all owe us some accountability too. The test scores are glaring that our school system failed our children. The medical system and the healthcare system and the public health system in this country failed us on multiple levels. Number one, in not knowing how to communicate with the public effectively. And yes, some of that was the public pushing back, but a lot of it was people that have had bureaucratic jobs or medical office jobs didn't know how to talk to normal people in a normal way to get their point across. That's on them. They need to get better at that. And of course, our government, who seem to want to use it more for power and to control things and to try to get credit and to alleviate blame. And those things all go together a lot of the times. They need to be held accountable. We all lived through COVID. We all had different experiences, and everybody suffered in different ways and overcame in different ways. Something like blanket forgiveness, blanket amnesty, that's not going to work. Some folks do deserve amnesty. Some folks definitely deserve forgiveness. But we must have accountability, or we're going to do this all over again. And then somebody else is going to have to write a piece begging for amnesty. And maybe that time someone will listen and go, no, we need accountability. Not to just forgive and forget. We can forgive. Better never forget. Because as the author pointed out in her piece, you're doomed to repeat this stuff. Yes, if it's all negative, you may get in a doom loop. But if you have no accountability at all, you're going to be in a failure loop anyway. More Hurt Tell right after this.